Welcome to channel AMEC, your insight to the Australian visa system. Good day everyone, my name is Carl Young, your online YouTube visa consultant. Are you interested about migrating to Australia? Why don't you consider to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell on the side, so once we have all the updates and news, you'll be the first one getting all the insight. Now, today's video, I would like to talk about this MIA Migration Institute of Australia, which is the largest and the #1 migration industry leader association, should I say. Basically, they have put forward a recommendations. Well, why are we talking about recommendation now? We recall that there's a migration review report in late April 2023, but it's now September. So what this recommendation from MIA obviously was submitted before April this year. But why are we talking about this now? Obviously, there is a government legislative and procedures that we're gonna look into it, and that is why a lot of people may say, why is there so much of a delay? What's going on? Why are we waiting for this and that? Look, electing a law and legislating a new policy and law is a lengthy procedure, unfortunately, and that's why we always seek to have a policy or regulation that can be, well, sustainable for long term. However, in the sector of migration, it always changes. So every time it changes, it requires to go into the legislative procedures. So let's have a look at what is the recommendation and how this all works for you. Okay, so it's actually, we're looking into the blog from the Migration Alliance, which is another industry body for migration in Australia, but they have put a news yesterday, and when I read it, I go, why are we, it's September, look at this, it's September 12th 2023. Why are we talking about a recommendation which was a paper submitted to immigration back in 16th of March? So when I read it, it actually pictures the actual legislative procedures. So why don't we go into the actual paper and have a look what the recommendations are? I think there were 30 of them. We'll go through that together. So as you can read, the Joint Standing Committee on Migration will inquire into the report on Australian migration system with reference to the following. So what happened there? So what I did was I Googled the Joint Standing Committee on Migration, and I found this web page. So it's a Parliament of Australia. As you can see, there is a procedural process going on in this web page. It's obviously the lawmaking authority of Australia, Parliament of Australia, and it's a joint standing committee. That means it's both parties, so Labor and Liberal, and all the peoples in the parliaments all come together, and they talked about and inquire into what's there. So we can see that there's a current migration pathway to nation building, which is exactly the topic or the title that the Migration Institute of Australia has pitched, and the status is current, and its a date refer was back November last year. So they have done something back in November last year, and the hearing date is the 27th of September, which is still about 2 weeks to go. But it really meant that there has been so many recommendations put it in. It's about time that the Joint Standing Committee is looking into that particular paper, and that obviously will bring changes, because when they have set a time and date that they're going to review and look into or inquire into a particular recommendation or paper or publications, that will generally given the power and the process of the government in looking into the stuff and actually refer or perhaps implement whatever the policy and regulation that we look forward to. So why don't we look into that paper that the Migration Institute of Australia has prepared for the government. You may be able to find this. All you need to do is you go into Google and punch in MIA and you put in Migration Pathway to Nation Building. As you can see, the date is March 16th, 2023. It's dated. Why are we talking about we are already in September? Why are we talking about this? Because this is actually in the queue of the next inquiry into by the Joint Standing Committee. So it's quite lengthy. It's about 37 pages, a lot of words, but all we wanted to have a read is the actual recommendation. So if you go look at this, the contents 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it actually matches to the Migration Alliance's reference to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that basically refer to the whole document of what the MIA has submitted. So what we're going to do is we jump straight to the recommendation, because this will actually summarize what MIA has recommended the Department of Home Affairs, Department of Immigration to do for next. Okay, so let's go through them. It will take a little bit minutes of you, but I think it will be fruitful, and that's how we estimate and predict the futuristic policies. So looking into a lot of documentation and recommendation from the stakeholders. Okay, so the first one is recommendation 1. The MIA recommend that a holistic population strategy be developed and utilizing migration as strategy enable nation building. So obviously it's looking for the whole picture, but how? Well, that's up to the government, not just to legislate a policy or regulation based on a one perspective, rather than looking into a whole broad perspective, not just looking into the housing crisis. I think that's what they're trying to say, in other words, indirectly, but looking the whole picture. So infrastructure building and things like that altogether. Recommendation 2. The coordinate range of the settlement assistance services support new migrants at all level of migration journey to be developed. Now that scope will be really wide. I don't know how much information is that going to be there, and that's something you may be interested. You may want to read more detail in the whole paper. Recommendation 3. Settlement assistance support services provided within the coordinated one-stop shop system. So that means there's going to be one, authority or body formed by the government to actually service that. So that would be something like Centrelink. Okay, just servicing the migrants. Recommendation 4. Cost applying skill permanent residency visa to Australia to be reviewed. So whether or not they are thinking about it's too expensive or too cheap, I don't think it's going to be too cheap, but how they're going to review it periodically, don't know. Okay, recommendation period. Recommendation 5. The period of time permanent resident visa take to assess and decide to be reviewed. So I think 4 and 5 will go together, the fee together, and they gotta set a periodic period of time once it lapse. The government body is due to look into it and renew it. Otherwise, we don't want it to come back and always say, "Look, this is outdated. This is designed 10 years ago. It's outdated." So they want to do that periodically. Recommendation 6. Utilize the 2-stage skill provisional temporary visa classes to be reviewed in determinant of the practice, support, objective, and characteristic skill migration to the Australia. I think so. That will form together with the 5 and 4 up there. Recommendation 7: Department of Home Affairs introduce stakeholder consultation process prior changing any migration policy, setting impact current skill visa class eligibility. This is very important because as a migration profession, a lot of time. The Department of Home Affairs or Department of Immigration, well, they never told us what's coming and what's updated, and they changed the policy internally, and suddenly we receive series of refusal or series of changes that causing a lot of problem in the profession like us. Well, obviously we take fee from services. How do we explain to the client? How do we explain to the visa applicant? Now, if they do it DIY, they have no idea, they got refused as well. So I think this is a very key thing that basically tells us that the department has done a lot of things without telling the public, and that's the problem. Okay. Now, recommendation 8, recommend that the global talent visa program as a means of building human capital to be reviewed and restore to the priority to take within the skill migration program. So the current system, the current policy doesn't give the GTI applicant a priority, and they have actually cut out the endorsement procedure as well. So what MIA is recommending is put that into priority, because these are the high human capital people that you're talking about. I actually done a personal submission to the department talking about this, because I recall in late April that the Minister of Home Affairs Claire O'Neill actually said about the system is outdated nowadays. It takes too long for Australia to actually attract global talent, or whatever. He was talking about a vice principal or VP or from ANU. So it was an example, but now it's happening. All these GTA applicant and candidates waiting for so long, and there was no result. And some of them has got their result with a closed decision, if you know what I mean. Okay, well, let's continue on. Recommendation 9. I'm sorry. Permanent migration to be increased by 20% to 230,000. Now, for the places of 2023 and 20, unfortunately for 2023 and 24, it's capped on 190,000. What was there? And there has been a lot of debate. You probably seen a lot of news that the opposition is talking about, due to housing crisis, the stop all the migration, blah 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 going on. But again, if you're looking into the nationwide, and a lot of stakeholders, for example, last time we talked about the I think that was Business Council of Australia. Everybody's saying the same thing. Everyone, the business industry, and the obviously migration industry, the education industry, tourism industry, everyone is talking about increase of the migration. It's only politicians, when they go into polls, some of them may reject it. But anyhow, let's see how that goes. Recommendation 10. The migration program planning level to be determined minimum of 3 years cycle, provided stability and consistency of the user of the program. That will be good. That will be good, because we don't want every time there's a change of the government, and there's so much change going on, and we just cannot. It's not stable. In other words, recommendation 11: direct. Permanent residency pathway to be developed international graduate with honors or higher degree from Australian university discipline in high demand. That is very good. We want the good student to remain. And if you recall one of my videos talking about from the migration review report, giving these people, or even giving those graduates overseas from a top 50 uni, temporary visa to come to Australia as well. Okay, number 12, age limit for permanent residency for employment sponsor to be restored back to 50 years of age. That is very good, because currently it's capped at 45, and a lot of people will miss that out. And 13, upper age level remove entirely, exempt occupation and persons under the TSS employment nomination and BIP classes. So exactly, I think that would be the good part to go as well, because if there are so many people still fit and they can contribute a lot to the community in Australia, even though they're age of 60 or 65, they're still a lot of people very healthy and has a lot of talents, and also be a human capital, high human capital as well. Recommended by PIC, public interest criteria 4007 to be applied to skill migration classes. Recommendation 15, significant cost threshold for Australian visa classes increase a minimum twice minimum of twice the annual per quarter health expenditure and blah blah. So that actually goes back to the review on the fees as well. So they are talking about significant cost of threshold of Australian visa classes increase minimum of twice of the annual per capita GDP. So it's double of the GDP. I don't know how that will work. That's leaving that to the economists. The period calculation significant cost threshold reduced from 10 to 5 years. So as we are living in a fast changing environment or circumstances or ecosystem nowadays, 10 years is just too long. 5 years, I think that's a fair period or cycle. 17, functional occupational skill list within the migration system to be reviewed. Surely. The 18, TSS occupation list and regional occupation to be consolidated. Completely agree with that. What they have been talking about, and there has been numbers of different entities recommending the same thing as well. And LMT, labor market testing, to be abolished. Sure, they talked about that already, and that was on the migration review report as well. Abolish or reduce the Skilling Australian Fund. Totally agree, because if this is for the regional sponsor. Because look, regional sponsors is not making as much as for business in the suburban areas. So giving them exemptions, incentive on this will be good. The Skill Australian Fund to be collected a second application charge. Agree with that. And that's for when it's approved, because currently when you launch the nomination application, you need to pay for it. But what if you get refused? The money is already gone. So they should be at the stage of the second charges. So just right before approval, they send you an invoice, pay, and done. So that's a better function. The Skill Australian Fund to be collected smart monthly payment. That's for the sponsor employee, so they cut the cost down as well. And another recommendation 23, abolish the Skill Australian Fund for employer sponsor TSS and temporary resident transition stream visa holder for the permanent residents, because they already pay for that 2 or 3 years. Why would they need to still do it? It aligns with that news article that we have shared with you, that why would somebody transfer into permanent residency still require the employer to actually nominate them again? So if there is no nomination, there is no fee required to be paid. 24, number of skill assessing authority to be increased. Agrees that currently the delay is huge. The skill assessing authority to be developed a consistent approach requirement assessing migrant skill and employment experience. I totally agree. Now, the different assessing authority has different way in assessing the criteria. And currently, it's just crazy. Okay, 26, skill accessing. Well, I think that's wrong. Assessing should be assessing, not accessing. Okay, authority to be required, provide transparent review, provides for unsuccessful applicants. So they need to tell us why you deny or why you have put in a negative result. Sometimes that a lot of skill assessing authorities result, they don't tell you why. They don't tell you the reason. Okay, the process of overseas skill recognition to be reviewed but determined in the hinder migrant participation in the labor market. 28, the government implement campaign initiative to educate industry and employer to discrimination as a barrier participant in Australian labor market skilled migrants. So this is more about what the government should really do. Recommend increase the service support, provide those skilled migrants partner humanitarian entrant to enhance the potential entry of labor market. I totally agree with that. So we don't want the partner to actually be left out. And last but not least, recommend that the federal minister, so that's Minister for Home Affairs and Minister of the Immigration, the Government Department and the Parliament Committee seeking consult with the external stakeholders should coordinate these consultation process for more efficient information gathering and sharing. Now, what that's trying to say is the current process is inefficient and it's just not good enough. That's basically what. So we notice that it is inefficient, because if you look at this recommendation was put in November 22nd. 2022. That was last year, just right before Christmas. Now it's September already, and the next hearing for this recommendation paper is actually 27th of September, 2 weeks from today. Now, you tell me this is efficient? Well, obviously it's inefficient. Anyway, should you have more question and query, more than welcome to leave comment right down below. And I'll see you next video. Goodbye.